The desert doesn't forgive, it doesn't forget, it doesn't care who you are. Under its burning sun, even the strongest men crumble, and one man was about to find out what survival truly meant. When Sergeant Daniel Ross opened his eyes, all he could see was an endless ocean of sand. His helicopter had gone down 2 days ago during a dust storm over the Al Haddam Desert. He remembered the crash, the explosion, and the screams of his squadmates fading into silence. Now, only the howling wind remained. His lips were cracked, his tongue swollen. The canteen beside him was bone dry. He tried to stand, but his knees buckled. The world spun. God, not like this, he muttered, his voice little more than a whisper. He began to walk, one step, then another, dragging his boots through the sand. The sun was a hammer beating down on him, merciless and unrelenting. Hours passed, his vision blurred, then he fell face first into the sand. The world turned black. When he awoke again, he was inside a small clay hut. The air was cool and smelled faintly of herbs and smoke. A woman sat beside him, wrapped in a tattered shawl. Her eyes were dark and kind but carried a sadness too deep to measure. "You're awake," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "You shouldn't be alive." Daniel tried to speak but couldn't. His throat was too dry. The woman lifted a bowl to his lips, but it wasn't water, it was milk. Thick, warm, and faintly sweet. Desperation made him drink without question. "You're safe now," she whispered. "Rest." He did. Her name was Amina, a widow living alone on the edge of the desert. Her husband had been killed years ago by raiders, and her only son had vanished during a sandstorm. She had learned to survive on what little her goats gave her and what she could trade with passing travelers. Daniel stayed with her for days as his strength returned. But food was scarce. The little milk she had was all they could share. When the goats stopped giving milk because of the heat, Amina had nothing left to offer, except herself. One night, Daniel woke shivering despite the desert heat. Amina sat beside him, watching him breathe. He was delirious again, whispering names from his past. She knew he was dying. She had no medicine, no food, no water. There was only one thing she could do. She pressed the small bowl into his hands once more. The same warmth filled his chest. It wasn't just sustenance, it was life. Her milk kept him alive. Day after day, she gave from herself, growing weaker but never stopping. Daniel tried to protest when he realized what she was doing, but she silenced him. "You have someone waiting for you," she said. "I have no one left. Let one life go on." Her eyes glistened with tears, but her smile never faltered. The days turned into weeks. Daniel grew stronger. He began to help her, repairing the broken roof, fetching firewood, and digging a small trench to collect rainwater if it ever came. He wanted to repay her kindness, but she only shook her head. "Repay me by living," she said. When the rescue team finally arrived, following the faint distress signal still emanating from Daniel's half-buried beacon, he refused to leave her behind. But Amina was too weak to travel. The desert had taken nearly everything from her. "You have to go," she whispered, her hand trembling in his. "This is your chance. Don't waste the life I gave back to you." Daniel knelt beside her, tears cutting paths through the sand on his cheeks. "You're the bravest soul I've ever met," he said. "And you," she smiled faintly, "are proof that kindness is never wasted." When the helicopter lifted off, Daniel looked down through the open door. The small clay hut grew smaller and smaller until it was just a speck among the dunes. A single figure stood in the doorway, waving weakly. Months later, back in the United States, Daniel returned to duty. But he wasn't the same man anymore. He carried a small pouch of desert sand and a silver locket Amina had pressed into his hand before he left. It contained a single lock of hair, tied with a piece of red thread. Every time he faced hardship, every time he thought of giving up, he remembered her words. "Don't waste the life I gave you." He built a charity in her name, the Amina Foundation, to provide water and shelter to widows and orphans in desert regions. It started small but grew into something that saved thousands of lives. During an interview years later, a journalist asked him, "Why this cause? Why deserts and widows?" Daniel smiled, eyes distant, voice heavy with emotion. "Because once," he said, "a widow in the desert gave me everything she had, and it kept me alive."